Hello creatives, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com and today I'm here with Joanna Wiebe. Hi Joanna.
Hello, two Joannas. The world will implode any second now.
It will. Just a little introduction in case people don't know you. Joanna is a conversion copywriter and founder of copyhackers.com and airstory.co and an international professional speaker. She's also a prize-winning author of urban fantasy. Talented woman, Joanna. And you're in Canada, aren't you? Which is awesome.
I am in Canada, yeah. I am on the west coast of Canada near Vancouver.
Which is great. I love that. I don't think I have enough Canadians on the show.
Oh, there's never enough Canadians. So just kidding.
Exactly.
That's
right.
cool.
Well, I wanted to get started. You describe yourself as a copywriter, and a lot of authors hate the word copy, like content.
Oh.
It's like, is this content? Is this copy? It sounds somehow less creative. So how would you explain copywriting, and why should authors care?
Oh, well, so my first job was technically a copywriter, but we called me creative writer because I hated the idea of being called a copywriter. So I get it. And then eventually I came around to being called a copywriter. And this is the important part, right? Is when is your work best done as a copywriter, right? So creative writing, fantastic. You get into a narrative that can apply in copywriting, right? The ability to pull people into your story, to hook them, all of that is critical for copywriting. And it all, of course, comes from creative writing. But copywriting is there when you are ready to basically sell books, right? When you're ready to pitch agents, if you decide to go that route, or have your agent then say, here's the letter we're sending for the pitches that we're doing to editors. If you can give copywriting feedback there you are. I mean, copywriting is really moving people to the yes, right? So you get a yes using your words. Sorry, I have my cat here climbing over towards me. Aww. I will move her. Yes, she's very, you're not paying attention to me. So that's where copywriting is a skill that you can really shift. It's not the same as creative writing. I don't believe it's the same as creative writing at all. There's things that are in common, but it's there to get people to say yes to whatever you're trying to persuade them to do. And so that can be, of course, really persuasive when you're writing let's say your sales page on Amazon for your book or something like that. How do you get people to care about your book compared to all the other books out there that they could be reading, right? Why should they read yours? Practicing and learning copywriting can help you with that.
Yeah, fantastic. And I did want to actually talk about the book description, which is on the online retail stores, which is probably one of the most important pieces of copy that an author should care about, right? And you mentioned hook there. So, and this is something we all struggle with. So what are some of your tips for deciding on a hook? Yeah,
for me, one of the best shortcuts to a hook is complete the phrase, I never thought it was possible, but. So whatever follows that is usually a good filter for a hook. So if it's like, if you started to write a page by saying like, this book is going to show you, or this book takes you down a path of discovery. I don't know what your line is, right? Does that complete the phrase, I never thought it was possible, but. So I never thought it was possible, but this book takes you down a path of discovery. No, bad, right? Clearly bad. But if you can start, and really when you use this, I never thought it was possible, but it forces you into the most interesting part, which is all anybody cares about, right? Like skip all the preamble, drop me right into the middle of the battlefield, right? The battlefield principle, we call it. So I don't want to hear about all the surrounding peripheral stuff, but drop me right into the middle of it, make me care instantly. And that hook framework, I never thought it was possible, but is a good way to find that. And that might mean that you already have a page written, let's say. So don't worry about starting the writing process for your copywriting by saying, what follows, I never thought it was possible. But you could instead just write out whatever it is that's in your head, just go dump it on the page, write as much as you need to. Then go through it line by line and see if any of those lines that you've written complete that phrase. So you might find that your hook is buried way down, or like the lead is buried, right? It's way down in paragraph 3. Cool. cut everything, start there, right? Go open with that. So, so it can work really quickly to get you to that initial hook. Yeah. Does that help?
That's great. That's a really amazing tip. And it's so funny because I think where we are now in the political climate, and there's a lot of, and I know we're not going to talk about politics. What I want to ask is, so many people, like I was talking to a PR lady and she had these type of questions, like, what is the most interesting thing about your backstory? And I'm like, do you know what? I don't want to go there, because if you want to pull out that's going to really, so what do you, with people kind of feeling a bit of a backlash against some of these clickbaity headlines in blog posts and things, and if people are feeling a bit weird about doing this type of copywriting, how, I think of you as this really authentic lady. So how can you bring that authenticity and that realness to copywriting when you're also trying to hook people? Yeah,
I think one of the things I want to make clear is that I never thought it was possible, but doesn't appear on the page ever, right? Like, it's just, you complete the phrase. So that, but I think I know that a lot of writers feel that, right? Like, I was an English major, creative writing was like a huge part of that. And none of us wanted to hang out with the business majors. We were like, ooh, gross. Marketing, like, you guys just hang out over there, we're gonna hang amongst ourselves, we're cool. So I get not wanting to participate in things that sound clickbaity. If it triggers this like weird reaction in you, I think gut is something that writers have they're really tuned into that, right? But don't let your fear of sounding salesy get in the way of you selling. So you should start by writing the clickbaity headline. Start with that. Do that. Take a formula that will end up sounding like clickbait, put that down first, and then edit it to the point where you feel good about it, right? So BuzzFeed is filled with clickbaity headlines because they work, right? They work and they work and they work. You don't have to say this one trick developed in Argentina will shave 50 years off your face, right? Like, you're not doing that. But what can you take from the formulas that they're relying on, the formulas that have turned BuzzFeed into $1 billion business, using content that they didn't even write? Like, they took other people's content and rewrote it, and now they're worth over $1 billion. And then it's like, oh, I don't want to sell out. I'm not talking about that, but like, what can you do? You want to sell books. Right? If you're self-published in particular, it's on you. If you're published by a traditional publisher, it's still on you, really. So you have to know how to do this, and start with the clickbaity formulas. They're all over the place. We've got a whole post on formulas on Copy Hackers. If you're like, I don't know where to start, there's all sorts of them on there. And just pay attention when you're reading BuzzFeed. And then pull back to the point where you feel comfortable, and try different ones. Like, if you have a book that's not selling very well, and you can rewrite the copy for it such that it does have more of those formulas in place that help, like, they're there for a reason. Over time, this is how we've evolved to hear stories and have our curiosity piqued. So you don't have to apply it across the board, but where can you start trying to use different copywriting techniques and see what happens, at least as a starting point?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you said there, and you have this post on Copy Hackers, and this idea of a swipe file, I think, is something that a lot of creative writers won't know about, because there's this fear of plagiarism, and not fear, rightly so. We don't plagiarize. So what's the difference between kind of using a swipe file, and what is a swipe file, and how is it useful when you're writing?
So plagiarizing is a little bit different in copywriting. Yes, you never want to plagiarize, obviously, but copywriting is about taking other people's great work and building on it, really, when you're doing it right. If you sit there and you stare ahead at your blank page and you think, what should I say? That's like the opposite. Like, you're stop right now, back up. You can do that with your own creative writing all day, right? Comes from you. It's all of that great stuff that you already talk about. But for copywriting, others have mastered this stuff, right? Like the great legendary copywriters you don't know about because you're not in copywriting, but they have shaped what we're doing today. All of those clickbaity headlines from BuzzFeed come from copywriters in the 1920s, right? Like this, it has been in play all this time. And if you can just go keep a swipe file. So swipe file, just as a quick overview for those who don't know, is that when you, let's say you get emails from other authors or Amazon, you sign up to get emails about different books and things like that. What do they send to you? What do they say? What does the subject line say? Did you care? Did you open it? Did it get your interest? That goes in a swipe file. You can do this in Gmail very easily for keeping like swipes for email copywriting. Put folders together like great subject lines, and then save that in that email with a really great subject line that made you pay attention and open. That goes in your swipe file. Then when it's time for you to sell your book, you say, this is the subject line they use. What's going on in it? How can I use it for my own work, right? So it's like 4 words with 2 periods in it, and those words, one of those words is all caps. It doesn't mean you're going to copy the subject line, but you're going to say, okay, well, here's the framework of what they were doing. What if I try that for my subject line, for my sales email, and see what happens? And that's all we're talking about with swipe files. Not taking somebody else's work and copying it and pasting it into a new document, like a new landing page or something like that, but take the core of what they're doing there and just leverage it. Just use it. It's yours to use, as long as you don't, of course, plagiarize. And people do, obviously, in all walks of life, but that doesn't mean you have to. But that doesn't mean you should also be held back from borrowing great ideas that convert well.
So then I guess I wondered about how does SEO work with copywriting and search engine optimization for people if they don't know what that is? And so are we writing for people or computers when it comes to a landing page or a blog post or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So when I first started copywriting, like 15 years ago, a long time ago, when I first did, there was SEO, right? SEO was starting to be a thing, search engine optimization. Okay, write copy that will make sure we rank on page 1, and then of course higher up on like number 1 on page 1, right? That was the whole idea. And everybody was in a frenzy. Like, this is how you had to write it. This is the way to do it. This is how you get traffic to your site. And then of course ads came out, and ads got promoted heavily, and Google was built on it, right? And Facebook is being built on it. And so it didn't become as necessary to get organic traffic. There were other ways to get traffic, right? And of course, if you're building your email list, that's yet another way to push more traffic back to your site, get them to do other things. And then along came A/B testing technology, right? That's where we can say, okay, now we've moved from SEO to CRO, which is conversion rate optimization instead of search engine optimization. So SEO isn't gone. But CRO is like, okay, well, once you get traffic to your site, are they doing anything? Like, are they doing what you want them to do? Because there are lots of ways to get people to your site. But once they're there, what are they doing? And how can you make them do more of the thing you want them to do, which hopefully, if they're good traffic, they also want to do. So that's the world I live in, is the world where it's like, once you've got traffic there, are they saying yes? Are they giving you the yes for buying your book, for signing up for your list so you can keep emailing them as you launch more books or as you relaunch or do campaigns or whatever, right? Are they sharing on social, things like that? So I don't recommend that people worry a lot about SEO. Now, that's right, big asterisk next to that, right? Like, hold on. It doesn't mean don't worry. It's like, if you don't have other ways to drive traffic to your page, like for Amazon, let's say if you don't want to pay to drive somebody to your Amazon product page, that makes sense because they could go find your competitor right below you, right, in the other recommended books. So, okay, that makes sense. So what can you do to be found there, to be found on your sales pages, wherever they may be? And that's where, having keyword phrases incorporated in your copy on that page is an important thing to do. And you can do that without sacrificing the the ability to convert, right? So what I would say is I never recommend that someone lead with thinking about SEO when they're writing copy or content. Lead with the user, because Google wants you to lead with the user. Google is siding with the user, not with people who are stuffing in keyword phrases, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can write copy that sounds like something your user would say, it's likely to be more natural language. It's likely to be what they'll search when they're like, book about cool person who is a vampire or something, right? And your H1 happens to be your title with a book about a cool person who is a vampire. And that is good for Google, right? And it might not be a keyword phrase that says vampire ebook sale or something like that, but rather it's that natural language that might be searched, and that Google is smarter than we are. Google is much smarter than we are with those things. So write for your user. Google rewards you. We've seen that again and again. And make sure when you're writing for your user, just so happens that that's also very good for conversion rate optimization. So it's good for search, good for CRO. No point in not writing for your user. And that's where we say you should take your copy from what you know people are looking for, right? And that really comes from book reviews and things like that. So go through Amazon book reviews to see what phrases people are using that kind of stand out. Go through Goodreads reviews, not just for your book, for the books you want to rank against, right? If you're writing a vampire book and you know there are lots of vampire books out there, go read the reviews and try to do an analysis there, and use that language from reviews, not from the product description, from the reviews. In your own copywriting, and that's more likely to be natural language that will work for SEO and for conversion rate optimization.
Now, you've just freaked people out by saying things like A/B testing and CRO.
Sorry.
And everyone's
going...
don't
have to worry about it. Don't worry about it.
No, it was great. But I want to come back because you've got this, you've just started developing airstory.co, which sounds to me much sexier than something like CRO. So I wanted to come back to the importance of story in all of this stuff, and why is story the basis of so much of copywriting?
Yeah, because that's how we learn. That's what we're looking for. That's how we pay attention. I mean, we think we're looking for facts, and that's when you're selling a feature. We're not. I mean, I know one weird guy who's always like asking me about like facts in life, like what airline I took when I went to a place. And I'm like, no, I want to talk about the place I went to, like the cool thing that happened there. And he's like, well, was it Airbus E7? I'm like, I don't know. He's the one person on the planet who cares about facts. Everybody else wants the story. That's like, obviously, as I think all writers know, it's how we've evolved. It's how we collect information and process it. Nothing matters until you can visualize in your head and your imagination is engaged. The color blue, saying blue, might bring something to mind, but telling a story that puts bluish images in your head is far more compelling. And we've seen that in tests that we run, in scary A/B tests that we run, right, where you take something that isn't like a concrete sort of thing that doesn't create a picture, and you test that against some copy that does create a picture, and the copy that creates a picture converts better. That picture is a piece of the story, right? And of course, if you have a bigger meta story, like a brand story, we hear a lot of talk about that, like what's your brand story? That's good for getting people to care about your brand, understand who you are. If you're Dollar Shave Club versus Gillette, Dollar Shave Club has a better story. Gillette has no story, right? And so they might be doing really well, but how did Dollar Shave Club come in? They had a better story and they're building up, right? Well, they have a story at all. So there's that part of it. And then there's the on-page story, right? Where if you write emails and you tell a story about what you're going through or what someone that was reading your book was going through and they wrote something to you, and here's something I just heard. Those kinds of stories are going to outperform, hey, we're launching this book right now. It's about X, Y, and Z. Come here to buy it. Tell me more about like the reactions that people had or what you were going through when you wrote it. And that we've seen, not with books, but with other things, is more likely to convert than just like what people think marketing and copywriting are about. So just keeps coming back to stories because of the way we've evolved. That's at least what the academics say, and so I'll take it.
Absolutely. And of course, you have, you're an award-winning urban fantasy, you have these books. It's amazing. And when I discovered them, which you're quite stealth about them, really, they're kind of just hanging out there. And I wanted to ask you, what part does your fiction play, or what part has it played in your creative life and your business?
It's just an escape for me. It's like, I loved creative writing when I was an undergrad. I won some awards there in undergrad for that, which was cool and gives you like, okay, maybe I could do something with this. And then I went to Japan actually to teach. And while I was there, my goal was to have a year to write a book. And I wrote like 2 paragraphs. Like I had nothing. I was creatively like nothing. And so it took a while to get to a place where I felt like writing anything. I think I was holding writing on a really high pedestal, right? Like I'd written in undergrad, it was this very like post-structuralist sort of writing that I did. And then you're like, well, no one's going to buy a book about that, sadly, right? So as cool as it was there, what do I do now? And then I started reading some young adult fiction and I liked it. I won't keep writing it because there's a lot of stuff I didn't end up liking about it. I liked writing for myself. You have to actually write for librarians, right? Like librarians are the ones who make the choices about where the books go and reviews and all that kind of stuff. So I learned a lot in that process. And I decided to stop working. I had a 3-book contract. I decided to stop after book 2. One was I just didn't have the time with my business to do that, but we all know that you can make time for things you really want to do, right? So I just wasn't feeling the love for writing young adult fiction anymore. So I'm still agented at this point to still have an agent, and we'll see what happens with other things. But like a lot of people, I'm now working on a bunch of other ideas, and I haven't rediscovered the discipline of working on just one idea and going with it. So we'll see. That's why I don't really talk about it much, because although I like the writing process, I don't like the publishing process at all. I liked my publisher, but there wasn't a lot I liked about that. You think it's going to be like this moment when you get the book in your hands and you're like, oh my gosh. And you walk into a bookstore and your book's on the shelf and you're like, that's my book. Take a picture. But I never really felt that. It wasn't, I don't think it was the right book for me to write, but I did because I wanted to. And I'd had it in my head that I had to publish. Yeah. And so I did. And that's why now I'm just allowing myself a break from it. We'll see. The next one that I write, I want it to be something I really want to write, like a story I really want to tell, not just maybe something that feels like, oh, it's going to be a trilogy, and then you'll write another trilogy, and then right where I'm like, oh, I don't want to go on that wheel, So that's why I don't talk about it that much. It makes it sound very depressing. It sounds like, oh, the worst thing that ever happened to me was getting published.
It's actually it's quite a common story, and you can always come to the dark side and go indie.
I love that, right? Like I was thinking that because you have other books that I have other ones that I completed and I've thought about self-publishing them. It's just, I know that it's also a marketing game, right? And do I have the marketing resources, the time and availability to push that, right? To market any book that I self-publish. But that's why I follow you to learn more about all of that good stuff. Right? There.
What I love and why it's great to talk about it is because, there's a lot of people listening who might work in a day job or have their business, and fiction is that kind of slightly guilty pleasure, which is difficult to actually make money with, so it becomes kind of on the back burner. But what I read a blog post that you wrote, which I've put in my Evernote because I want to come back to it over and over again. It was called Note to Self on Time Management, and you basically were like, Joanna, you've just not done all these things and you're exhausted and you're burned out, and what are you doing? Why are you doing all this stuff? So I wanted, and a lot of people again will understand that. So how are you managing your time in 2017 to not have to write yourself another post like that?
Well, yes, actually, there's some readers that reach out after I write something. One of those is an acquaintance who's become a friend. His name is Todd Herman. He's a coach to Olympians and business leaders and things. And he was like, we both went to the same university, so we kind of connected. Just like, hey, we're from the same old crowd. Maybe we should be part of the same new crowd. So anyway, he reached out to me after that, and he runs a program called the 90-Day Year, which is all about getting, setting these goals and doing these things. And he's like, well, hop on a call with me, right? Like, let's talk. Let's see what's going on. So after talking with him, he gave me some really good techniques that I'm using now. I'll see how they go, and then I might hire him. He said that he would take me on, which is like, phew, because he's really like, he knows his crap. Like I had an hour 20 call with him or something. And now I'm doing what he recommended, their theme days. So a bad thing is context switching. When throughout your day, you're switching between 7 different things that your mind has to think about. It's not even necessarily multitasking. It's like after you've done an hour of this, you switch to something else completely. So you think you're single tasking, but you're context switching, and that's a problem. So he's like, okay, from now on, you're going to theme every day. So I have like financial Fridays. That means like on Friday, I work on the business money stuff, that whatever that looks like there, I spend that time on there. I work every day of the week, which I was already doing. I felt bad about that because I'm like, well, you're not supposed to work weekends, right? Like that's the thing. And he's like, that's made up. Like the weekend is a made up thing. It doesn't have to be a real thing for you. You're allowed to work on weekends, but you have to make sure you're taking time off too, time for yourself. So if Financial Friday is Financial Friday and you have 2 hours of work to do your 2 hours and then go on with your life, right? So you might only put in those 2 hours. Another Financial Friday might be this huge thing where you're meeting with your bookkeeper and you're going through line by line everything. And that could be an 8-hour day. Okay. But it's a theme day, single focus on that day. You go away after the work is done, period. So I've been integrating that. It's hard. It's hard to break the habit of like, okay, I'm done. There's other stuff to do. I know it's not like content marketing day, which is like Wednesday. I know I'm supposed to wait for that, but I should do it. So I have to like tell myself and get Lance to tell me like, stop. Right? Like, stop it. You're done for the day. And that usually for me, that means switching from my primary business to, okay, Air Story stuff, this other thing, this other software thing we're launching. So there's that. That's a big part of what I'm changing right now is being more conscious of the things I'm going to do on each day. I'm setting a goal the night before for what I'm going to do the next day, like the one thing I'm going to get done the next day. I used to try to do like 7 things in a day. Like, wow, I didn't get anything done. Shocker. Of course you didn't. So like one thing a day. So those are kind of the bigger things that I'm focusing on right now. Do you have the same problem? How are you with time management?
Oh, yeah, that's why I asked. Because of course it was like Dear Joanna or something, and I was like, oh, she wrote me a letter like on the internet. And I'm trying really hard this year to block out my time a lot more. So similar to you, like theme days, like yesterday was a JF Penn day, which is like my fiction name. So and I know a lot of people listening have a day job and you can't have a whole day, but if you have 2 hours a day or 1 hour a day, you could still theme that 1 hour, right? You could be like, okay, well, 3 mornings a week, I will do 1 hour writing fiction, and the other 2, I will learn some marketing stuff, or I will do the copywriting for my description. So I'm definitely doing that too. But I was looking at I think it was LinkedIn. I think we left our jobs at the same time in September, October 2011, right?
Yeah, exactly. I left September 2011.
Yeah, me too. So I know
it's amazing.
It is. It's kind of crazy. So, and why I wanted to ask you about this time management stuff is, clearly we're still struggling with various things after 5 years, nearly 5.5 years ish. So I wondered, what are the other, like, a lot of people want to make the leap. So can you kind of think back, and how did it feel to make that leap? What were you scared of, and what actually got you to make that leap?
Totally. I wouldn't have made the leap if not for an accident, a big accident, which I'm pretty sure is God, like, enough. Stop complaining about your job. You are quitting this, even if I have to make you do it accidentally. So I had a boss I was not a fan of. I'm shaking my head for those who are like listening. Not a fan at all. And I was like, okay, but I was at this really great job. I was a copywriter, which I'd come from an agency where they're like, you're the lowest rung. We don't care about you, right? So you're going to get paid nothing. And then I went to Intuit, this big tech company, and they were like, cool, copywriting. Here's all this money. And so I had this great job that I didn't want to leave, right? Because it was like, well, I'm making good money. And I was writing on the side while I was doing that, right? But I had a meeting with my boss, and I had been writing these I quit emails. I had perfected the art of the I quit email. It was like I had everything covered. It was like a cool tone. I wasn't like passionate or anything, just like, hey, I'm leaving. So anyway, after this meeting with him, I wrote yet another I'm quitting email. And then it was a Friday afternoon, and I worked from home. My husband also worked from home. And Friday afternoon, it was like 4:30 or something, which was wine time. It's Friday. We work from home. Let's have a glass of wine. So I was still sitting at my desk, which was right next to the kitchen where Lance was bringing wine over, whatever, and I still sat at my desk and we just talked. And I had a bunch of windows open on my computer because I was using Outlook, and you write an email in Outlook in Windows, or you can open a new window for every one. So I had like 6 or something stacked up on there, and I'd just written another one long after the I quit email. I'd written other emails that I hadn't sent. And so I'm sitting there having wine. You can see where this is going. I'm having wine with Lance. We're talking. I look at my email, just click send off to the side because it was like one I had to get off to this other person at work. And I look back and it's like, oh, it didn't send. Like I didn't click it or something. And I click it again. And then like hours later, it's like, oh my gosh, I clicked the I quit email. It's gone. It is gone. So Lance and I do panic mode. I go and look, like try to recover, like bring that email back, right? It was Friday afternoon. They were out east. I was on the West Coast. Chances were good nobody had opened it yet. So I went to try to get it back, but because I'd perfected this email, I had HR CC'd on it, and HR had opened it, and so I couldn't take it back. And so I was like, okay, I guess I just quit. So that was how I left, but it wouldn't have happened if it hadn't happened that way. And so I totally get people who are like, but if I go out on my own and do my own thing, and then all of the anxiety and objections that follow that, right? And there's a long list of them, and they're all scary. I ended up having freelance work immediately. There's always more work. If you're like, right, so you can find it. You can find a way to do that if you want to bring on freelance work. I was living off savings for a while, so if you have a little bit of savings, that's good too. But yeah, that's how I went about finally leaving and doing my own thing in a very scary way.
That's awesome. And I totally agree with the freelance work, or just any kind of work that doesn't mean you're an employed person, like where you have more freedom of time because then you can fit stuff in. But kind of fast forwarding till now, like what have you learned apart from the time management thing? What have you learned in the last year as a 5 years in? We're still learning, right? So what have you learned in the last year that has made a really big difference to your business?
For me, it's been finding people that can do work that I no longer want to do. It doesn't mean I've found all of them. I've hired some people and they haven't worked out. But if you want to, I have a principle that I teach to freelancers, which I think is out there a lot, and that is hire yourself, right? What can you hire yourself for to grow your own business? And if you don't have skills that you would hire yourself for, like if you're like, well, I'll do all my website design, but you would never hire yourself to do your own website design, hire somebody else for that kind of stuff and hire yourself for the things you're good at or that you want to do, right? It's one thing if you want to have website design in your back pocket as something else, like a hobby or something, and you're like, okay, I'll hire myself for that, knowing it's going to be a long slog, but I'll learn a lot and I want to have those skills for later. But if you don't even want to have those skills later, outsource those. I know everyone I talk to is like, well, how do I get the money for that? And that is be frugal for a little while, save, so that you can buy yourself the freedom that you need. And it might sound easier said than done, but if you don't try it at all, if you don't save that money and then hire someone to do the work that you're not good at and you don't want to do, but needs to be done for your business to grow, then you won't grow. So I have found that hiring people and getting them to do work that I'm not good at and don't want to be good at is a huge part of growing my business and buying myself a bit more of the time, not a lot. It's always funny how much more work does suddenly come into. But it has been a big part of getting a lot of projects off the ground. And
yeah, and it's so funny because so often we feel like we're the only people going through these challenges, and yet that's exactly the same thing I've done in the last year, is that the realization that I have to hire more people. Like after I met you, I went and hired a copywriter. Yay! I was just I just decided, like, yes, I know enough about copywriting, but it's not like I'm just not, it's just not, I just shouldn't. No one would hire me for copywriting, so I should get someone else. So that's really interesting. So I did want to ask you about hiring a copywriter, because you have this site, Copy Hackers. So if people are feeling like me, they need help with copywriting. So I've actually got right now a copywriter redoing my book descriptions, because why not? The ones I've got up there, some of them have been tweaked over and over again, but I've just please do something with these and look at the reviews and exactly what you said. So if people want to hire a copywriter, how would you suggest they do that? And are there resources at Copy Hackers?
Yes, there are. So we have, because there's a world of copywriters out there, and a lot of people who work in Word say, I'll do a copywriting gig at night, right? But they don't necessarily know how to be copywriters. There's a skill there. There's techniques. There's a lot of stuff that you have to have tried to know if it's going to work, and why something you're about to do is unlikely to work, let's say, the way you're about to write something. So an experienced copywriter is far better than an inexperienced copywriter. So I would say, hire an experienced copywriter. We have a certification program at Copy Hackers where we thoroughly review people's work and the way that they work, and only then do we certify them. So maybe 10 people that we have, but they're listed on Copy Hackers for hire, which is attached to Copy Hackers. So there's that. But I would say, because when you hire an experienced copywriter, they're going to be a more expensive copywriter. You should prepare yourself for that. And that means don't put them on random crap, basically. Put them on tasks that are going to move the needle for you. If you're like, this book is really good, like the reviews are great, but nobody's finding it, right? Then that's a good option. If it's like, well, I have 20 books that I've self-published, I'll just get them to rewrite all 20 descriptions. A great conversion copywriter is going to charge you a lot of money for that. That is a poor use of things. So start small, get them in on one or two of your, we would look at an Amazon sales page as a sales page, right? It's there to close, right? So how do you close people? You have to know how to write a sales page. But if you get somebody in who's done that work before, then you can get those results where now they've got you ranking, where they're getting people who stop on your page to actually know why they should buy this and then buy it, versus another person who would just wordsmith, which is always a very, very bad thing, and you should never hire a copywriter for that. So that's all I would say is look for a really experienced one, be prepared to spend some money, have a realistic budget, not one that you wish were true, but absolutely is not true. Like, if I could get this done for $250, it'd be amazing. Well, that's about an hour of time for a conversion copywriter. So they might review it and give you some notes in that time, and then you'll have to go implement. But for most conversion copywriters, you want them to rewrite your ebook page, let's say, or your book page, and you want it to sell. Get them on that one page. It's not going to be $250, but you can always talk and work through things with them. And just don't assign them to everything. Don't get them to write your website. If nobody's coming to your website and you don't really care about your website, don't hire them for your website. Hire them for the things that are going to bring in revenue for you.
No, that's really helpful. Just a quick question after that then. The traditionally published books on Amazon, are they, in terms of using examples in the genre, are traditionally published books well copywritten in terms of their sales description, or do they just not care because they've never really gone that route? They've used other marketing methods?
I can say from my experience, traditionally published meant that somebody on the marketing team at the publisher was writing it. Period, right? Not a copywriter. So, there's a huge opportunity there. And that's where it's one of the great things, I think, and I've talked to other people who've been traditionally published and now are self-publishing. and you're going to be heavily involved in marketing no matter what. But at least when you're self-publishing, you've got all the sign-in credentials for all the different technologies, right? So you can go right into Amazon and write your page and go through all the motions with that, make it better and better and better. You can control growing your list, right? That list is yours now. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of great things there that traditional publishing does not have, right? Where you've got very busy marketing teams that are working on a lot of different projects and it's rare to have because a great copywriter is a hard thing to find, like a great anything is a hard thing to find. It's rare that they'll be in-house working for a publisher. So knowing that you're on the same playing field as traditional publishers, right? And the books that that authors are writing for them. But the difference is that you can control that. I couldn't control what my publisher was going to put on Amazon. I couldn't. And you'd hope that they're going to do a really great job, but I'm not going to, it sounds like I'm like anti-publisher, and I'm not, but I do know that you could market your book at least as well as a publisher can market the books that they're marketing.
Fantastic. Right. Well, we could go on talking all day, but we are run out of time. So where can people find you and everything you do online?
Yeah, at copyhackers.com. That's with an S, and on Twitter at copyhackers.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your time, Joanna. That was great.
Thank you, Joanna. Thanks, everyone.